It's finally time to see which one of our amateur drivers is going to be taking home the trophy. Lewis will take pole this time with a 104.049. Over 2 seconds behind him is Lex, who does a 106.87, not having the luckiest time so far. Gary and Derek are the next two in line, coming back from our Mid-Ohio race. Eric will finish us off. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to get a lap in, which is why he's starting at the back. Lewis leads us to the line, cuts the beam, and the race is underway. First corner, I believe, should be flat. We'll see what kind of action happens here. There's definitely some different lines being taken, different speeds going through the corner, but no contact, and we're all in the same position. And then we have a hard braking zone. There could be an overtake here. It's Gary gone way wide. Into the grass goes Gary and the cars behind as well. That would be Derek and Eric all going off. Lex stays glued to the back of Lewis, but not for very long, I feel. The gap in qualifying was massive. Lex is going to be hoping that he can at least put enough pressure on Lewis to have him make a mistake. He can only get faster, but at this stage in the event, it's time to just keep the car on the track and drive consistently. They're all still in the same position despite that off. Gary's starting to break away, but Derek and Eric still have a race on their hands. Lex goes a little bit wide over the curb, but still stays pretty close to the back of Lewis. The lines through this section are very important if you want to carry speed. You want to be able to use the entire track. Let's see what Lex does. He's a little bit too shallow, but he knows what he's doing still. Not a bad display there of racing lines. Lewis may have a better idea though, because that gap is expanding quite a lot in quite a short amount of time. It's only been one lap and it's now nearing the 2-second mark. These three have still stayed fairly close. Once again, Gary's still breaking away just a little bit, but Derek and Eric staying pretty close. Eric's going to prioritize the entry here, see if he can get a better exit than Derek. This is where the circuit breaks off from the typical Grand Prix layout and goes straight to the, well, hangar straight. Derek's gone a little bit wide, so has Eric. They seem to be following each other off just about everywhere. That does happen even amongst the Pro-Am drivers. You really want to gauge how fast you are compared to the car in front. You don't want them to break away, so you try and get the similar idea of their speeds. However, if you're too focused on the car ahead like Eric was, you'll be going off with them. Despite that, Gary's dropped back enough to see this as a battle again, a pretty equal gap between all three of them. Again, this is where a lot of overtakes can be made, a lot of time. Derek once again going wide. Not quite braking early enough, but does he have a better line through here? Maybe just a little bit wider than Gary, for sure better on the exit. Eric dropped it in that section just a little bit, but he didn't lose too much time. I think he managed to catch it, but these two are still being pretty close. It's just not quite hitting the apexes right for these guys. They're losing a bit of time, and that gap is starting to increase again. I think we're going to see some cars go off here. Lots of speed being carried. Both Gary and Derek go wide. Eric keeps on the track. Derek spins. Eric just barely avoids Derek. That seems to be quite a difficult corner for these three. It is kind of hard to find a braking zone there, but it's better to play it safe than try and push your way around. We snap back to Lex, and that gap has gotten a lot bigger in this time. It's only been 3 minutes of running, but Lewis is now a couple of corners ahead of Lex. We'll see if his line is improved. Hitting that sausage curves, that's not really what you want, but he definitely has the line down. Hitting the apexes at the right time and using 100% of the track. But Lewis, I think, is just able to carry a little bit more speed. Maybe be that tiny bit more precise. But these two, not doing too bad at all. It's also a little bit of insight there. Lewis seems to be braking at the start of that left-hand curb going into that corner and making it through pretty clean. And again, this is the short circuit. So these guys only take a couple of the first corners on the full track and then immediately switch back onto the hangar straight into this very technical, hard to get right right-hand corner here. It's a very late apex, really hard to judge. Lewis is just riding the inside the whole time. That might not be a bad strategy, honestly. It is certainly slower than doing the late apex, and Lex can make a lot of time up there, but I'm pretty sure that the gap that Lewis has formed, he can keep doing that and kind of play it a little bit more safe, a little bit more consistent, and still walk away with this one. I think unless Lewis makes a huge mistake, even if Lex is going to be hammering out 103s, which I don't think we're going to be seeing any of those anytime soon, I'm pretty sure Lewis has got this one. It's definitely a solid drive, and it seems like he's got a pretty good idea of how the car handles and what exactly its limits of grip are. So whether he's purposefully taking it a little bit easier or not, he's definitely being smart about it. Eric has managed to still stay fairly close to Gary. That gap doesn't really seem to have changed very much since Derek spun out. A big time killer I'm still seeing from these guys is that they just refuse to use 100% of the track. Going in there, Eric and Gary should have been all the way to the left side running that zebra striped curb. Eric's braking a little bit late but caught himself. Not a perfect line but saved it. For a minute there I thought he was going to spin it. Huge puff of sparks from Gary's car. There might be a little bit of a latency issue happening at the moment. But if not, I believe Gary carried a little bit too much speed. Maybe went off, clipped that sausage curb, bottomed out the car, and Eric took advantage of that. He's now up into P3, but Gary's going to stay really close to the back of him, I'm sure. We'll see if this battle continues at all. I'm curious to see what they make out of this corner here. It's definitely the most technical part, the one that you want to have the most experience for. Gary's riding the inside, and so is Eric. Eric apexes a little bit later, though. Gets a better exit. Gary almost goes wide, but keeps it on the track. Through here, we're going to hope that they can both get on the brakes at the right time, and they both do. It's going to come down to how much track they want to use at the end of the day. Eric seems to have taken a little bit of a wonky line through there. Definitely seems like a tail-happy car from Eric, and he's off into the gravel. So is Gary, nearly following him off, but he's deep into the gravel. Not sure if that was clipping the sausage curb or just not using the track to the fullest extent, but Eric will have lost P3 there, but I'm pretty sure he's still going to be pretty close to the back of Gary since they both touched the gravel. I was definitely impressed with how quick Eric got it out of the gravel. Usually we see the car become very light and dig into the gravel, want to go straight on, but no, it kept its trajectory pretty well back onto the circuit in quite a timely manner, and the gap remains still pretty close. 5.5 minutes left on the clock. That should be quite a few laps. There's definitely moves that can be made if Eric picks up the pace. Let's see if their lines have changed at all through here. This is a very fun corner to watch, seeing everybody's take on this. Eric, once again, has a pretty close idea of what you should do. You just want to apex that a little bit later, going onto the curbs, using more of the track than Gary. Did he get his braking right? Yes, he did. He's done better on the brakes than Gary. What about through here? This is very important. Gary going way too wide, but Eric is on too shallow of a line. He's going to have to slow down, but the gap still remains very close. P3 is definitely still up for grabs. Once again, not using the whole track. Eric looks like he's going very wide, but keeps it on. Big time loss for him through there, though. Because it was such a shallow entry, he had to go very wide on the exit. But I'm thinking he's got this corner down pretty well. A little bit wide, maybe a little bit missing the apex there, but honestly, putting it together pretty well through this sector. The laps are blasting by now that we have something to watch. Back onto the hangar straight. I'm thinking that the gap is getting a little bit smaller. It seems like Eric's a bit more consistent, but Gary's that little bit more optimistic. He's carrying more speed. We'll see if Gary's got this sector down a little bit better. Eric definitely missing the apex by quite a lot. Going off the track, but not anywhere too dangerous. Lost some time for sure, but he's going to get the braking down pretty well here. Pretty good apex. Once again, Gary just doesn't have that part down. Eric moves to the inside. That's not the move you want. It would have been better to try and sweep around the outside there, but he didn't have very much time to make that decision. He's definitely got that final sector down better than Gary does. But he's way too wide on the first corner. He needs to work on that one a little bit. Again, using more of the track would help a lot, but I think he's really struggling with the braking zone there. Gary goes super wide into this corner and doesn't bother getting back on the track, just cuts it there. I'm not sure whether or not that's a time game. It doesn't seem to be. Eric remains pretty close, but he was a little bit off on that line. Probably thinking Gary was still had dirty tires, couldn't really make that corner fast. So he tried to go around the outside, but Gary did get on the throttle when he needed to. The gap still remains pretty close, just about the same as it always has been, but Gary's way too far into the inside there. Eric can make up a lot of time. Are we going to see the same thing that we did on these previous laps? Is Eric going to have a better idea of where to go? If it's the exact same scenario, I sure hope he tries to go wide this time, but I think Gary's got it down now. Eric looks to the inside, then wises up, decides, yes, I should probably go wide, get a better exit, and that paid off for him. Now he's just got to use the whole track, but he's not going to. He's going to get a bit of a wider line than Gary, getting a better idea of what to do through there, but still missing the apex, braking a little bit wonky, and using a lot of the track there. I think it's probably better to stay to the inside, but Gary once again goes wide. Eric not as much, but still off. They're now side by side. Eric gets forced off into the gravel, but there's going to be contact going into that corner. Eric clips the cones. Very close racing there. Maybe a little bit more awareness could have been helpful. That's not the best place to try for an overtake. Eric probably could have backed out, stayed glued to the back of Gary, gotten a better run through this corner. But that gap increases. Eric's got to work his way back up again, but he's only got 2 minutes this time. It was hard to tell from that camera angle whether or not Gary forced Eric off or whether that was just driver error, not being able to get to the inside. Maybe that just sent him off. Whether or not Gary or Eric was the initiator, it was a pretty hairy moment for 3 corners anyways. It was inevitable that something was going to go wrong for somebody, but I think Eric could have been a little bit more smart, maybe got some damage control out of that. But we've seen Gary is struggling a little bit with consistency. Maybe he'll make a big enough mistake for Eric to sneak away, but Eric runs wide again in turn 1. That seems to be where he's making the most mistakes. Turn 1 in the final corner are pretty big time losses for Eric, but I honestly think he's got the rest of it down not too poorly. We switch back to Lewis, who's currently leading the race, and this is Derek, about to be lapped, I believe. Lewis has had a pretty lonely race so far. This is probably the first time he's seen the back of one of these BMWs. Derek's definitely getting the blue flag now, and he's going to hang out to the outside. Very sportsmanlike from Derek. He knows that there's no point in risking contact between him and Lewis, but I think even if there was contact, it wouldn't change anybody's race. Lewis is so far ahead and Derek is so far behind after that unlucky spin that I think our results are going to be the same. Unfortunately, you didn't get to see it on the screen, but Gary made the exact same mistake that he did on the last lap, and Eric managed to get by this time. They're going to have one more lap to fight it out. We'll see if Eric can hold on to that. He's really got to get turn 1 down if he wants any chance of having 3rd place. Lewis demonstrates how the final corner should be taken. If Eric or Gary are looking in their mirrors, hopefully they got a glance at that. Hopefully they can use that, but I doubt it. Let's see who makes a mistake into turn 1. If anybody, we don't have eyes. Now we do. Eric still leads the way from Gary. Gary tries to outbrake Eric, but it goes terribly wrong. Into the grass, into the gravel, back onto the grass. So far off the circuit, in fact, that the camera struggled to keep up with it. What a kamikaze attack from Gary. That was way too late on the brakes. Nearly went back onto the Grand Prix circuit after that. That will almost guarantee that Eric takes 3rd place. And now Lewis is on the back of Gary. This is a very interesting place to have to get around back markers. Lewis looks to the inside. He's not going to get the move done. He's going to go way too far to the inside. But he's going to keep it on the track. He knows that he doesn't really have to risk anything, but he's still going to try for the overtake. There might have been the slightest bit of contact there. Lewis definitely trying to race Gary. Gary not really wanting to give away the position, although that's not really going to matter because Lewis is just lapping him, and this is the final lap anyways. He won't have another chance to race Eric, and it's race over for everybody. Lewis drives a very dominant race, does a very good job keeping the car on the track, displayed some very nice racing lines, but I think that there's still a little bit more time out there to be had. Eric and Gary's battle was pretty fun to watch. There was a lot of chaos going on there. I'm glad that there wasn't too many huge crashes that spun anybody out. Eric managed to make his way back past Gary after that mistake he made in the first couple of laps. Lex also drove a really great, clean race, but just got absolutely outpaced by Lewis, and that's a little bit unfortunate, but he's still showing a lot of progress, and he could only get quicker. After that spin, Derek kind of focused on just picking up the pace, and he is 1 second faster than Eric. It was great to see some returning faces this time out. Congrats to Lewis for winning. Very, very good drive from our amateur driver here, and we hope to see you in the next one. It'll be a while, but we'll be back. See you then.